is a bigger group than the last few times I've been here, so thank you for all for coming out. And as Kashif was saying, yeah, I'm currently president and founder of High Point Marketing. It's a marketing consulting firm, and I'll kind of go into a little bit more. So I'm assuming everyone's here wants to hear more about sales and closing the deal, right? Otherwise you won't be here. So how many people are actually, the sales is actually their formal capacity, that's actually their job. And then the rest of you, are you business owners, and you just business owners, independent contractors, and so forth? Okay. So as Kashif said quite eloquently, that yes, everyone, we're always in sales. Even if you're not a business owner, even if you're not in a sales capacity. Actually, we had a quick conversation on the back, which I thought I should have used as my case study on sales, was that one of my best closes, one of the best deals I closed was when Kaylee said yes to marry me. Actually, I probably could have written a nice case study on that, because it's actually it actually had a lot of sales techniques in it. So, but it's all genuine though. So, anyways, so let me introduce myself. As Kashif said, I was born in. And sorry about the color. Actually, the color looks a lot better on my laptop. For some reason, I think we couldn't get the contrast adjusted, but I thought it's probably better to look up here than it is on my laptop anyway, so bear with it. So anyways, I was born on this little island in the Pacific. It's actually called the Big Island. It's the biggest island in the chain of Hawaii. Anybody been to the Big Island? All right, great. If you ever drove a little north on the Kona coast, the little town of Kohala, it only has one stop sign. It still only has one stop sign. And it's a great little arc town. But born there, and then about when I was 9 years old, we moved to California. Grew up in San Jose, and then graduated from San Jose State with my marketing degree, as she outlined. And then my first job out of college was actually a sales job with Coca-Cola, and that was interesting because I never in a million years would have thought I would be in sales. Number one, so I went to school for marketing to really thought I was going to be in the corporate office and just creating marketing strategies for large corporations, but the opportunity presented itself to work for Coca-Cola and in sales, and for whatever reason I didn't blink, even though I never thought of myself as a salesperson. But I worked there for a couple of years, got some great experience, and then after that I worked for Novartis Pharmaceutical for a couple of years. It's probably one of the top 3 largest pharmaceutical companies in the world, I believe still. Worked there in a sales and marketing capacity for a couple of years, and then went on to work for Bristol Myers Squibb, where I'm still presently working, and I've been here for the last 13 years in sales and marketing capacity. I've won multiple national and regional sales awards. I actually serve on the Sales Leadership Society there, which actually honors salespeople that have shown kind of consistent results over the lifetime of their career, as well as also the sales trainer there, and also do some marketing projects for them as well. So pretty busy, even though my capacity is technically sales, but I do a lot for some reason. So anyways, but it's a lot of fun. So actually last year, I thought about, what's my next move after this. I mean, I enjoy pharmaceutical sales, I enjoy what I do, but I knew there's something else I needed to do. So since my degrees in marketing, and I've had a lot of practical experience in marketing, I decided to start my own consulting business, and then my partner Jeff Ray is in the corner. He's partnering with me in the business as well. So we started this about a year ago, and it's been a lot of fun. The thing I guess I like the most about it is every project's different, every business is different, so we get to do a lot of research about what makes it tick. So essentially, the best way to describe what we do is that we're essentially the architect of marketing strategies. So we build the blueprint, and then we usually have to hire out different contractors or services to actually implement and execute the strategy. So that in a nutshell is what we do. So let me go over the agenda real quick. I'm going to describe kind of the characteristics of a good salesperson. I think everybody has kind of a stereotypical image of what that looks like. And then we're going to go through the planning process, because really the closing the deal, it's not about that last, just asking for the business at the end. There's not like a creative, cool strategy, and how do you close the deal? So I know that's a topic of discussion today, but really closing the deal starts before you even enter the sales call, before you even reach your customer. Because as I'm going to outline, really you need to earn the right to close. I think a lot of people struggle with closing because they haven't set up the call, they haven't led into the close effectively, and we'll describe that. So after you did some planning or pre-call planning, you want to come up with some kind of creative opener to engage the customer. And then you're going to get into the body of the sales presentation. That's when we have, you always talk about features and benefits. And then you close, and there's different types of closes that we're going to go over. And like I said, to close effectively is when you earn the right to close. So, number one, you got to be yourself. First, I guess the question I was going to ask is, what are some of the characteristics that you envision that an effective salesperson is, or an effective closer is? What are some?
Being enthusiastic.
Being enthusiastic.
Empathy.
Empathy. Good.
Listen.
Listen. Good. You guys already read my slides. No. So that's great. So hopefully I can still teach you something. I've spent the last 20 years in sales, so to try and condense it in half an hour is pretty much impossible. So one of the things you just have to understand is it's always a learning process. So I'm glad that you all are here. So hopefully you can take at least one tip out of this to start working on, because to change any kind of habit, we all have habits as salespeople, and to change a habit, it takes a good month to 6 weeks to continue to practice that and execute that to actually just establish a new habit. So the one thing you want to do is every time you pick a tip up is to consciously and intentionally practice that so you can develop some good habits. So anyways, so the first thing is to be yourself, because I think the way where people get into trouble when they're trying to be a good salesperson is they try and emulate somebody else that they think is a good salesperson. Maybe what's their personality. You definitely need energy, but your own energy. You don't want to try and be overly enthusiastic when that's not really your personality. I'm an introvert, but my wife would disagree, but I'm an introvert, so I'm not the person that's going to be up there rah-rah, shish kumbah kind of thing. I have a little bit more of a reserved personality, so when I'm in a sales call, that's kind of how I am, but because that's just who I am. So what I've seen in sales is that there isn't that one type of personality that emulates a successful salesperson. In the companies I've been at, you can line up all the successful salespeople, talk to all of them, and they're all different. And so that's the first thing you want to make sure is just be yourself. Be assertive and not aggressive. I think aggressive is like when that used car salesman approach. There's not any used car salesman here, but that's what we think about, right? That's kind of that stereotypical aggressive salesperson. You don't want to be aggressive, but you do need to be assertive, meaning you do need to ask the right questions. You do need to ask for the business. You do need to get engaged with the customer, so you just can't be afraid to talk and engage. You can't even be afraid of hearing answers from the customer that you don't want to hear. So the one thing is be assertive and not aggressive. Never assume. So a lot of times as salespeople, we have our agenda. We go in with our agenda, and we're just pushing our agenda down their throat. And we're assuming that if we throw out enough features and benefits, that they're going to purchase. So what we call that is show up and throw up, is that you're just constantly talking. And so we're going to get to listening in a little bit. But the first thing is you don't want to assume. If there's something you don't understand, if a customer says something or has a response to a question or has a concern or whatever, and if you don't fully understand that, ask them. Ask them to explain it. I think sometimes we're afraid to know the answer. So don't assume. Just always ask the question. Just really get curious. In the sales call, it's supposed to be a conversation. So you're supposed to get to know the person anyway, know your customer, know their business. And so you want to fully understand what they do and what they mean. For every little thing that they say, you want to ask, you want to understand that. So here's a little tip I just picked up on a book I read called The Challenger Sale. And it talks about don't always look for agreement, but actually look to actually challenge them. So what I mean is that you want to produce something of value. If they're always agreeing with everything you're saying and nodding your head and in agreement, we feel good as a salesperson that, okay, they're tracking with me, they're agreeing with what I have to say. But if they're agreeing with everything, then have you provided them with anything of value? And so what that means is that if they already know everything, if they've already agreed with everything you have, then you probably haven't offered them anything new. So what you're trying to do is provide solutions. I think we've heard that term before, solution selling. So solution selling is when you are actually providing something different. You're offering a different viewpoint that they haven't thought of. So the responses I like to hear in a sales call is, oh, I've never thought of that. Or, hey, that's interesting, you know, no one's ever said that to me before. So when you start hearing that kind of responses, then you know you're tracking, because now you're providing something of value that they haven't thought of, that now they're seeing you as not a salesperson, but they're seeing you as something that's going to provide a solution. So you do have to close. So you have all these characteristics, but you do have to close at the end. You do have to ask for the business. So those are some of the characteristics of a successful salesperson. That really just comes from me. This is from my experience of what I've observed. So don't necessarily take it don't take it as the gospel. But those are some of the things I've noticed. So the first thing you want to do when you're going into sales call, number one is you want to do a pre-call plan. So which means you're going to have to do some research. You want to research your customer, their business. You want to get to know them before you even talk to them. Because you don't want to spend a half hour to an hour just trying to understand their basics if you can already get that before you even get there. So that way, in the conversation, you can actually throw out some tidbits that you know about their business or their customers or them. And it usually impresses them. I don't know, does anyone can relate to that? So do the pre-call plan. So you know, as you're doing the pre-call plan, it's kind of like when we do marketing plan. When we do the research, we're trying to find that need. We're trying to find that unmet need. So before I even go in there, I can identify a strategy or put together a little strategy or solution. And if anything, I can start to identify with the business. So it's not necessarily a cold call. Gotta talk about that. So you lay out, you do your research, you do your homework. And you probably put together an agenda, you probably put together a sales presentation for them. You've got all your ducks in a row. The last thing you want to have the mindset of before you walk in there, though, is be flexible. Because many times, many of the best sales calls I've had is when I went on their agenda, not mine. And so I like to know everything about my business, about what I have to sell, and what they're all about. And so I come in with a plan, but at the same time, I allow myself to be flexible and go where they want. Because after all, that's their need. I'm not here to sell what I have. I'm here to meet a certain need that they're sharing. So sometimes they lead right off the bat with something, totally catches you off guard, but you say, let's go with it. Because that's obviously a pressing need. So if I answer that need, then chances of closing a deal later on is a lot greater. And if you have questions as we go along, we'll just... Okay, Mitch?
What was one right before that, the bullet?
Create a potential solution. Okay, so now you've got, now you've done some research on them. You're pumping yourself up. You're going into the sales call, and so before you open your mouth, you want to think of some kind of creative opening. You need something that's going to engage them right off the bat, because you want to set the tone. So I'm sure how many of you have actually taken like sales courses or hired a sales consultant or anything? Okay, just a few of you. Okay, good. So you want to set the tone for the sales call. So you want to try to be as creative as possible, but you don't want to be cheesy either. So avoid the cheese. All right, leave the cheese at home. Don't say I've got a $1 million idea. I'm gonna make you rich. That kind of stuff. Okay, that obviously we all know. Whether innately or consciously, that stuff just kind of turns you off. So don't be cheesy, be truthful, but do be creative. So you want to grab their attention with a combination of a statement of fact, an actual factual piece of fact, as well as a statement. So, and I'll show you an example. And then before that, though, don't oversell it. So you want to deliver what you promise. So you always want to under-promise and over-deliver is my motto. So you want to be creative, you want to grab their attention, but at the same time, don't oversell it. So I was trying to think of kind of give some illustration or almost like a case study as I go along and describe the sales process so people can kind of grasp it a little better. So I know there's probably majority of the people that are here are primarily in the service-based business. How many of you are in a service-based business? So, okay. So see, I did my homework. So I was thinking of what's a service-based business I can maybe use as an example. So I figured I'd talk about health insurance, or especially if you're selling insurance to an employer or to a business. So I found this a couple days ago. It's actually a little survey that Forbes put out a few days ago. And they released a survey that showed that 49% of respondents see their health insurance premiums rising over the next 12 months. Yet only 16% of those respondents plan on actually rebidding or looking for other options. So that's an interesting fact. So I'm saying, well, why is that? So while healthcare costs overall may go up, you can possibly save money by only purchasing the coverages that you're actually going to use, or that your employers or your employees actually take advantage of. So if you did actual analysis, and who sells insurance?
Right.
Okay, is that almost true? I mean, that was just some basic research that I found. So if they did an analysis of what their employees actually took advantage of as far as health coverage, and took out the ones that weren't used or used very infrequently, their premiums actually might be able to go down. Is that, okay? I'm getting some nods. Okay, good. I'm glad I'm glad my research was almost right. Was right. So, anyways, so my opening statement was that survey, and so that survey led to my statement of, look, a lot of people obviously feel that the rates are going to go up, but why aren't they doing anything about it? Is it because they just assume that that's the way it's going to be, that since healthcare costs are going up overall, and it's all over the wire, it's all over the news, that maybe they're just accepting it? Where in actuality, if they actually took some proactive issues, they might find ways to save money, or at least their premiums won't rise as fast as everybody else's. So if you kind of couch that opening in that way, it kind of sets the tone. It might actually pique their interest a little bit better, because it's not just what you're saying, but it actually comes from Forbes. There's actually some weight behind your statement, because you're actually backing up with some facts. Does that make sense? So now we go to the body of the sales call, that's where we start throwing out those features and benefits. And but like the gentleman in the back said, you want to do more listening. So God gave us 2 ears and a mouth for a reason. We're supposed to listen twice as much as we talk. But I think a lot of us salespeople, and sometimes I'm even guilty of it, is we talk more than we listen. And the bad part of that is a lot of times we're just assuming we're giving the customer what they need. When the reality is, when you get into the close and they say, no, I'm not interested, we probably haven't discovered it on this end. So we really need to listen to what they have to say. And a lot of times they're going to tell you what they need if we just listen. But I think a lot of times when we're in a sales process, I don't know, sometimes it's nervousness. Sometimes it's our ego that we know what we're telling them what they need. And I think a lot of times, sometimes it's that nervous, we just got to keep talking. And a lot of it maybe because you're scared, because you don't want to hear something you don't want to hear. Does any of that make sense to anybody? Okay, all right. So you want to start, when you have your features and benefits, but you also want to ask some thoughtful questions. That's what we call the probes. Ask thoughtful questions, not just those yes, no's, not a lot of closed-ended questions, but questions that are going to actually make the customer think a little bit and give you a thoughtful response. So here are some no's, like, are you looking to buy insurance? I don't know if you want to hear that answer, so we probably want to avoid that question. How much are you willing to pay? Well, they're going to say as little as possible, right? Has anybody asked that question? like what are you willing to pay? Has anybody asked that?
What's your budget?
What's your budget? Yeah. So right there, and what's the response you get?
No budget.
Yeah. Well, what do you got?
Exactly. So that's a dead end question because it leads nowhere, right? So let's throw that out of our question box or our box of probes. But here are some questions you could ask, like what type of coverage do you currently have, and are you taking advantage of? Are you making use of them all? So if you're selling insurance, it's like start making them think. Do you know what you're using or what your employees are using? Another question you could ask is, if you could create your own insurance coverage, what would it look like? And then they start telling you exactly what they're looking for. Now, you may not be able to fulfill all that, but at least you get an idea of what they want. So anything that's just going to have them open up and tell you exactly what they want is better, because then you know what to work with. And I love objections Because then, again, objections to me is not a barrier, it's starting to understand what they need. And so when we get the objection, then I ask them, okay, tell me about that. What is your concern? Tell me more about this. Then we start getting to a little bit of a conversation. So my worst sales calls are when they just don't tell you anything. I mean, I throw out the best probes I could think of, and they just go, yeah, well, I don't know. I gotta think about it. You know, those are really tough. So that's actually the worst one. But the customers that are willing to talk and gab, boy, I love it, because we're just getting to that conversation. They tell me everything they need, and then I can deliver it. And then also in regards to listing, some of the best closes I've had was when I actually really didn't close them. They close themselves. They start, even if they start with an objection, but we start getting into conversation, and I let them talk, they actually talk themselves into a sale. So how many of you had that experience? Okay, so the majority of you would love to have that experience, right? I think all of us would. That's the best sales call. So how does that happen? It usually happens because we just listen and let them talk, right? Is that right? So, so you can actually save yourself a lot of time and energy and grief of closing if you just let them talk a lot, and then they'll just talk themselves into sales a lot of times. So, features and benefits. Have you all heard this term? I'm assuming a lot of you have. So, features tell and benefits sell. So, you know, the features are, you know, the color of the car, the kind of tires, the amount of the premiums. But the benefits are those intangibles, and I'll give you some examples. So here's some features. Features are, you know, our premiums are 20% less than our competitors. Okay, that's a feature. We have the most comprehensive coverage in the market. But then the benefits are, you know, if you save money on premiums, you have more cash to buy that additional equipment that you're looking for. Or you have less headaches when dealing with insurance. So, you know, when you have comprehensive coverage, you know, the likelihood of getting coverage is getting your whatever your health issues are covered is awesome, because then you lessen the headaches. Because if any of you have ever had any health issues and you have to deal with insurances, anybody? Okay, so it's a headache, right? So imagine if you can save 20% less plus have comprehensive coverage, or at least the coverage that you need, so that you can buy the other stuff that you want and save some headaches. That's probably a good thing, right? So what are the benefits? See, the benefits, what that basically is kind of a story or something that the customer can grasp. A lot of times the features are very almost abstract to the customer, especially if you're talking about technology. I know there's some people in technology. To the lay person, the average person like me, sounds good, but I have no idea. But if you can relay a benefit that I can relate to, now you got something, right? So let's take this ice cream sundae. Do you buy that because it uses whole milk? You definitely don't buy it because it's fattening. Do you buy it because the bananas are organic, or certified organic? Yes? No. Okay. Why do you buy an ice cream sundae?
Tastes good.
Tastes good. Okay. Now we're tracking, right? So you're buying the benefit. You're not buying the feature. So you don't go into Baskin Robbins and they don't tell you everything about the ingredients in these ice creams and bananas or whatever, right? They're just, you usually ask them, how does it taste, right? Or they give you a sample. That's when you buy. So the iPad's a great example. I know, Mitch, you got an iPad back there. Do you know how many gigabytes it has, or even megapixels on the screen? You probably do. So it's probably a bad person to ask, but do you know all the features to the iPad?
Yeah.
Okay. I figured you did. But truly, Mitch, why did you buy the iPad?
Right size, convenience, portability, apps.
Apps.
Use.
Fun.
Use.
Because obviously there's other computers out there that have maybe not as good a screen quality or megapixel quality, but from memory, some of the functions, there's probably other computers that probably have more, but that's not what the iPad's about. A lot of people, especially younger generation, it's the fun factor, right? Apple products are all about fun. You know, when they market Apple products, I don't even know what the gigabytes are, any of the Apple products. You know, like if Dell or Hewlett Packard, you might know because they see what they sell. But an Apple product, they don't sell that. They sell the fun, right? They sell the benefits. That's why it's got such a huge following. is that they do a very good job on selling benefits. Nike's the same way. Why do you buy Nike shoes? I mean, do you know what kind of cushion they use, air soles and all that kind of stuff? I do, but I still don't buy it because of that, just because it's cool. Obviously, top athletes wear it, so I figure, hey, you know, even though I'm only 5'5", I might actually be a basketball star when I was in high school. You know, so you buy the Nike shoes not because of the features, but because of who else wears it, and that's what they're selling. So when you make a purchase, are you buying on features or benefits? So just think about it just for yourself. Anything that you purchase, just think about it. Over the next 30 days, this is probably a good exercise, a good sales exercise for you guys. Over the next 30 days, every purchase that you make, think about why are you buying it? And because you're probably not buying on the feature. Why are you actually buying? When I go to Starbucks, why do I buy a latte? Is it really because the coffee is that great? Or is it because it's so convenient? Because it's everywhere. you know, you can go in the parking lot and there can be 2 Starbucks, one in the grocery store and one standalone, right? So, you know, think about that. Every time you make a purchase, just think about why you're buying it. Because then it'll help you in your own sales process. So then the conversation and how you do your sales, or how you give your sales presentation will change a little bit. Does that make sense? Any questions? Am I going too fast or not making sense? Or do you want to give me the hook? Go to the back.
Do you believe that businesses follow this, this same rule that they're actually, buying cool rather than buying, I guess, functional?
You mean like, say you're selling to a business, you're selling business to business, and are they making decisions the same way based on benefits? Absolutely, absolutely. Just because a lot of times if I sell business to business, just think about it. You always think I have the best product for this category, for their need, but yet you don't get the sale. So why is that? There's something else going on. So every time you're having trouble closing, and I get to that, like when you get to the close and they say no or whatever, come back and really try and delve in to find out really what makes them tick. Really, what is the reason that'll make them purchase? Because again, I talk about show up and throw. We're always selling features. What are the actual benefits? What are the things they can get a hold of? So like, what do you sell, or what's your business? Software. So yeah, again, software is going to be, to most decision makers that don't have an IT background. Do most of the decision makers have an IT background? Or? Okay, so right there, you already know that you can't speak IT. You got to talk benefits, because they don't give a hoot. They do want to make sure that stuff works well. So the things that most businesses, do care about when you're selling software is, number one, that it works well. Maybe it saves time, saves time and money. It makes the job so much easier and quicker. Like more time at home, because I don't have to worry about IT issues because the software actually works. You're not spending time on the, at the help desk or whatever it is. I mean, there's a whole slew of reasons why they should buy the software, other than the fact that it's the best software in the industry. It's not the features. Can I answer a question?
I think so.
So just ask them. So I think, the main point is, you got to ask them what makes them tick. And a lot of times in the very beginning, they might tell you features, but a lot of times it's really behind the scenes. They're really looking at the benefits. If there's something that they can really grasp, that's tangible, that you can tell them what a benefit is, they're more likely to buy, as opposed to just talking about the features of the software. So, anyways, hope it helps. But if you want to talk more, we can talk offline.
I think one of the things that we're looking for, we're doing a discovery way before we do the presentation. I'm in the software business just like James here, and we will spend about two to 3 days with a potential opportunity, and all we do there is we interview every possible decision maker, sum it up, and then address the actual points that were brought up as a benefit for them. So it doesn't really matter what software you're selling if the solution will actually resolve or address the benefits that they're looking for.
Sure. Good. So sounds like you had a lot of experience, and especially do the due diligence in the beginning.
Yeah.
Do that pre-call plan, essentially. Yeah. And obviously, different industries, you have to put more into that pre-call plan than some, but definitely in your industry, I know you're going to have to definitely do your homework before you walk in there. Thank you. Anybody else?
Just going back to maybe a more generic question, but if I don't have a lot of time to do the research, I ask the client to help me. And so what I'll ask is, how can we help you achieve your goals? That's a good start.
That's good. Yep. That's good. Anybody else? So during the sales process, it's always good to kind of check in for a couple reasons. One, really to find out what's going on in their head. Number two is sometimes we may be talking a lot and you don't realize it, so it's always good to pause and check in. Say, are you tracking with me? Is there any questions, any concerns? Yeah, I already said that. Let's see. So question for the insurance broker is like, how would you utilize this insurance? How would you see yourself utilizing this insurance? So get them to start imagining it. So it's also kind of a form of a trial close as well. But you know, as you're checking in, find out, okay, at this point, what do you think? How would you see yourself using this? It's always good to try and kind of personalize it. So the more you can try and personalize the call and get them to imagining how they would use your product or service, the better. Would there be any reason why not to purchase at this point? This is another trial close, but it's also just checking in. You know, how are we doing here? So now we get to the close. So this is the part everybody's been waiting for. I might have woke up at 6 a.m. Right? So as I said in the last slide, a lot of times what I like to do is just a trial close. Just find out, have I left anything out? Or you can also, sometimes people refer to this as a soft close. Is this something you would consider? What do you think about my product? So it's a general question, but at the same time, you're trying to elicit an honest response. So depending on, go ahead.
One thing about when I approach my clients is like, I don't ask about what you think, because they want us to be the expert in thinking. So my question is, I always say, how do you feel about my product? Because that seems, you know, it's about feeling, about, you know, it's all about emotion when we buy something. So when you're asking, this is my thing. When I'm asking the client, how do you think about it, then it's like, when I get the arms closed or arms clasped and the body language is in and is there. So my thing is, when I ask the client how do you feel about it, then it gets to a more emotional core to them.
Good.
And that's when I see the need, because again, I'm selling something that you can't touch, smell, or actually see. But so I have to see what their feelings are and find a certain type of insurance that I can provide.
Good point. Yeah, feelings. Again, it's kind of going to the intangibles of, because thinking is probably more of like I guess in terms of like, think about like a feature. Feelings is, you start thinking about benefits, I think. Good, thank you. Back.
Quick input with what she just said is that number one, you need to ahead of time get on the same page with the client. There's language and behavioral patterns. You must listen to the language of the person that you're speaking to. Kinesthetics feel something. Visionaries see. So if they're using the word see, then you would say, can you see the benefit of this? Or can you hear if they're auditory? Extremely important is the language and behavioral patterns of your buyer.
Good.
Get on the same page very quickly with them in the beginning, and it makes the close easier.
Good, thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? So if they haven't, obviously if the answers to these questions aren't positive or neutral or whatever, then you just have to go back into the exploration phase. We go back into, okay, you know, let's explore this a little more, let's unpack this. And then, but if you have a positive, then, well, you close. You say, okay, will you sign or will you buy? Everything that led up to that last question, was essentially the close, because if you've uncovered every issue and they've given you the positive sign, the last thing obviously is then to just ask for the business. There's nothing fancy to the actual close itself. But it's all about how you set it up, from the pre-call plan and the research to make you look like the expert, and then to you know, engage them quickly, and then just getting into the discussion. Really, the sales call is a conversation. It's like sitting down with your friend and just trying to get to know them. It's really, then it becomes a one-on-one. It's a free-flowing conversation as opposed to just one way of me telling you what the features and benefits of my product is. But when you have a great sales calls, when things are just flowing, maybe they're doing most of the talking, but there's an actual good dialogue, they're actually seeing that there's something of value that you provide, and then the close is almost like an afterthought. Like I said before, a lot of times the close, sometimes I don't even close, they close themselves. So yes, the close is important, but what you do beforehand is really the most important part. So, in summary, trying to do all this in 30 minutes, there's a lot to the sales process. And when we've gone through sales presentations or consultants and all that, we go through days of seminars sometimes, and we do it multiple times. So there is a lot to the sales process, and especially if we talk about the steps in the selling process or selling models. For those of you that have taken any kind of sales courses, that the sales steps in the sales process started with 3, just like the opener, engagement, conversation, and then the close. Now, depending on which consultant you hire, there can be 20 or 30 steps in it. So, but really, there's just essentially 3 phases, and there's a lot of sub-bullet points within that. Right? So kind of like what I almost illustrated here. So even though, but for me, I had 4 steps. It's that pre-call plan first, getting engagement right away, then getting into the sales conversation with the features and benefits, and then it's the close. But that features and benefits, a lot happens during that time. That during the actual sales presentation, a lot happens, and that's where we have to maybe start delving a little bit more into, how do you get engaged? How do you read body language? All those things are extremely important. Can't cover it today. But anyways, we will, number 1, just be yourself. In summary, just be yourself, number 1. Do some kind of background research ahead of time before you actually get into the sales presentation or the sales call. Get some kind of engagement right away. Bring some kind of fact and a statement to follow up with the fact. Bring something that's going to say, it's not, because otherwise, if we're as salespeople, they're always going to think, oh, you're just saying that because you want me to buy. But if you can have some kind of fact that is backed by some kind of authority, like Forbes or Wall Street Journal or whatever research company, then it carries a lot more weight. And then you get into the exploration of the body of the sales presentation, where you talk about your features and benefits and probes, and then you just close them. And if you've done, you don't close just for the sake of closing, but you want to make sure you've got some agreement, right? And then just continue learning and practicing. That's my suggestion. So, are there any questions?
I just wanted to add that, Robert, I want to say great job.
Oh, thank you.
The experience I have with you is that I trust you.
Okay.
You're genuine. These are great things to bring into the business.
That's what I try and do, yeah.
So a couple of things I wanted to pick up on that people have mentioned. One is that understanding the sales process for your product or service is critical, because you have to know where the client is in the sales process. There are steps you have to go through to get them to the close. And the commonest mistake for salespeople is that they think they're somewhere else to where the client actually is.
Right.
So really mapping that out and understanding what's the next move I should make is critical. The other thing about what the lady said about personality types is your point about benefits is really well taken. People buy from their biology. They don't buy from logic.
Right.
They have a biological response to what you're saying. It normally comes from avoiding pain or fear. They will buy to avoid failure more commonly than they will buy to achieve success, surprisingly.
Sure.
But the thing about the personality types is critical. If you're exploring benefits with a CFO, that's very different from exploring benefits with the CEO. The CEO is normally entrepreneurial, future thinking. They believe in a future that you're creating for them. The CFO is a judge type personality, and they want evidence, true, and even then they won't believe you.
Sure.
So it's a very different sale. So listening for who they are and making sure that the benefits you present to them will make sense to them is critical. Otherwise, you're just selling the wrong benefits.
Right.
So that's just
Absolutely.
a couple of thoughts.
Thank you. And the one thing I'd add on the close too is sometimes they won't make the purchase. I mean, you've uncovered everything, but still maybe they just want to think about it or whatever, and that's okay too. I think there's one thing on the close is you just want to make them. You just want to have a next step, and whether that's to actually purchase or is to come back next week to supply more information or whatever it is, but you want to, if they're not going to purchase at this point, you at least want to extend the conversation to another time. So what we call that is an incremental A to B shift. So a lot of times we have our overall goal, which is the sale, but then we got to think about, okay, what's an incremental shift we want them to make? What is the one step that we actually want to have them move towards the actual sale? Because a lot of times, especially in the pharmaceutical industry, we're not actually going to change practice habits right away in one sales call. It takes usually several or more. But we want to, at the end of the call, at the close, it's about what is the next step for you. So at least have that in mind. So you have your overall goal for the sale, but also think about an incremental step so that they're just at least taking one step towards the actual purchase. Okay. Any other questions?
Robert, how has internet changed the role of a salesperson? As most of the people are now buying using internet, either it's a product or they are researching the services online.
Yeah, that's a tricky question because it all depends on your industry, number one. At least in the pharmaceutical industry, the internet hasn't replaced this yet, and it probably won't. Really, in the end, the way I look at internet is it's a great tool. And it's a great resource for your customer. It's also a great resource for us as salespeople. And it's about how you use it. And there's a lot of businesses that are primarily internet-driven, which is one thing. But as the business owner, I think what you got to think about is some of the biggest sales you're going to have is probably going to be from a face-to-face conversation. You know, nothing replaces physical interaction. That I don't think will ever change. And especially now, when you think about the trend, everything's going automated, or they're going to the internet, online activity, online sales. The thing that's going to set you guys apart is the fact that you're face-to-face. Because the internet is not going to go knocking on the door and sitting in front of them and being able to have a conversation. The internet only tells you, they'll only read what they want to read, and they'll start screening things out. And the internet can't really unpack the needs of the customer. Now, certainly, again, depending on the industry and product you're selling, it's a huge driver of sales. But at the same time, depending on, depending on the industry, but I don't think there's an industry around that won't benefit from an actual physical salesperson, because that's what's going to set you apart. Because they can only, the internet can only work when they're actually on your website. Mm-hmm. So to actually be in there knocking on doors, and yes, you might get a no at first, but knocking again or calling again, saying my card or whatever, you can't replace that with the internet. Unless they create Android and stuff and they just go around and salespeople, maybe that's a different conversation. But nothing's ever going to replace the physical face-to-face interaction. That I'm sure of, and that is what's probably going to set your business apart from your internet competitors. Is the way to go in there. I think a lot more gets done in a face-to-face interaction than an internet interaction. So, and I hope I'm right for my job's sake. No. Anything else? Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you for attending. And